To this day, the assassination of John F. Kennedy remains one of the most talked about conspiracies of all time. His death had a huge impact on the American people and forever tainted the history of the United States. The upsetting video of Kennedy's death can still be found on the internet. This footage has been analyzed a million times over, and depending on who you speak to, the conclusion that a single shooter acted out this crime is either true or an intricate ploy to cover up the true series of events. Is the government lying to cover up this inside job? Was the mob involved? Or maybe it truly was just a single shooter. Let's take a deeper look. John Fitzgerald Kennedy was an American politician that was elected the 35th President of the United States in 1961. Being the first Catholic president, he was also the youngest to be elected to this position, being the ripe age of 46. Coming from a background in the US Navy, his presidency was well received for the most part. After just 2 years of service as president, his life came to an end in a brutal assassination on November 22, 1963. When visiting Dallas, Texas, Kennedy was riding in his presidential motorcade when he was fatally shot. It was concluded that 3 shots were fired in 3.8 seconds. The first shot missed, with the second shot entering Kennedy's back and exiting through his throat and continuing to hit John Connally, breaking a rib, shattering his wrist, and finally ending up in his right thigh. The idea that a single bullet did all of this damage was hard for a lot of people to believe. Could one bullet truly make its way through 2 people, resulting in such varying injuries? The fatal shot hit him on the right side of his head, causing the large wound we see in the gruesome video. From here on, the investigation started and the theories began to spread like wildfire. A man by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald was arrested shortly after the shots were fired. He was quickly pinned as the assassin and was tied to the rifle that was found on the 6th floor of the school depository building. The word spread quickly that Oswald was being detained for the killing of President Kennedy. Just 48 hours after his arrest, Oswald was shot dead by Jack Ruby in a supposed spontaneous act of revenge. Was it a coincidence that the only man that could have had information about Kennedy's assassination was shot dead? The Warren Commission concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald was indeed the killer of JFK and undoubtedly acted alone. Over the years to come, the American people became critical of the verdict when journalists and independent investigators began posing questions to the public. Did Oswald act alone? And can we really trust the government? The conspiracies only grew more intricate from here. The magic bullet theory suggests that it is impossible for the second bullet to have done such an enormous amount of damage on its own. The degree, speed, and type of bullet makes it extremely unlikely that it entered through Kennedy's back and ended up all the way in Connally's thigh. If this is indeed the case, it unequivocally would prove the existence of a second shooter. Although this sparked some controversy, this was only just the beginning. The true catalyst that led to the credibility of the commission to be questioned was in fact from a new government investigation. This essentially backed the idea that there could have been a second shooter involved. In 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded that there is probably a conspiracy that involves a second shooter firing from the grassy knoll. They analyzed the acoustic audio of the shots being fired that was caught on a stationary police motorcycle. If the CIA and FBI lied to the commission, it is fair to assume that they definitely had something to hide. Before his presidency, the CIA acted fairly independently, without restriction. Kennedy had a more diplomatic approach than previous presidents, which angered the CIA. Could this have been a strong enough motive to kill? Another popular conspiracy involves a figure labeled as the Umbrella Man. As Kennedy's car approached the shooting site, a man dressed in black opened and lifted an umbrella high above his head. The umbrella was then spun from east to west. Was the Umbrella Man involved? Was he some kind of signaler? Another conspiracy that is frequently spoken about involves American mobsters and Kennedy's brother Robert. Robert stated that he felt partially responsible for the death of his brother due to his feud with the mob. In attempts to prosecute them, they were angry enough to take revenge on his family, which just so happened to be the American president. Does the American mob have the influence and power to conjure up such a risky plan? To this day, the world still hasn't come to an agreement as to what happened on this tragic afternoon. Do you think we will ever come to a concrete conclusion? Or will John F. Kennedy's death continue to be known as one of the greatest conspiracies of all time?